who's the director of the Interreg project. Here we go, Carlos.
For giving me the possibility to share with you part of the knowledge that we have generated in these amazing 3 years with COVID, with so many things going on. I'm really proud of sharing with you this material. Voy a continuar en español simplemente por...
I'm going to continue in English to make it easier for most of the people who are here who speak Spanish. So now we're going to look in fine detail at each of the flows. So we're going to start with goods and services, mainly because this is where there's most knowledge. But where it's been necessary to make an extra effort to construct a base, to generate models or update models, to be able to make simulations. So here, the work that I'm going to present here has been put together by a wide-ranging team in Madrid and in CEPREVE. And basically, I'm going to focus on goods and services. Each of these 2 areas has been a specific exercise, a particular product and particular progress. So as Xavier was talking about beforehand, we need to know where we were before this project started and where we are now. So if we're talking about goods and services, the flows that we've had, if you look at the Eurostat website as the official information from the EU, so if we look at trade goods, it's the only thing that we know that crosses borders and that thing we know the most about. So we talk about the flows of goods, and we talk about national borders, so country to country, France to Spain, Spain to Portugal. So we've got regular stats, annual, monthly, but we know almost nothing about territorial breakdown. So there's been specific information from specific projects, but there's not been like a really exhaustive database that can give us this other dimension, such as Navarra, like Navarra's trade with Aquitaine in France. So this was the main objective of the project. So if we're talking about goods, this is what institutions have done, and services, nobody's gone there. Yeah, we've got no information about it at all. So we're going to talk about the method, which is much more complex. So if we're talking about goods, so we can resume what we want to call this. It's like a Swiss knife, that it's got lots of facets to it. It's not just one information on flow of services or goods, but several alternative tools which are complementary. First of all, we're generating a pan-European database, which with 197 regions, which is the EU 27 plus Norway, Switzerland, and Iceland, and Liechtenstein. Yeah, so it's a huge number of regions. These countries are not normally considered for international analysis. The idea is that all the databases were uniform for a particular period of time, and that they all covered the same geographic level. So we're going to talk about LUTS dos, NUTS 2. So the big new aspect of this methodology is we're talking about a frame. Yeah, we're talking about the distribution of all the modes of transport, not only road, as we saw in previous works, but all modes of transport. So we're not only going to look at aggregated data, but we're going to have the maximum data possibly. So it's a good survey database. So there's no hypothesis beforehand. So we're taking all the surveys that there are, pan-European, and then we're going to work with all of that. So it's a massive amount of data. And that's really important. So this is the configuration of what we're looking for. Additionally, we want to show that this is what right now is possible, the maximum that's possible in Europe. but in a pan-European aspect. But on this common structure, some countries are lucky enough to have a lot more information. So we want to do a specific case study looking at the work that's being done for almost 20 years in the case of Spain in the Interreg projects, where we're also being supported by the governments in Navarre and the Basque Country. The flows between Spain, France, and Portugal, and get to a NUTS 3 level. There's also like a NUTS 3 level, but NUTS 5 level, which is municipalities, but that's a much more specific focus. So we're looking at temporarily wider range of data. So it's much bigger when we're talking about products, yeah, because when we're talking about goods, there's a lot more information. It's a lot better expertise available. So when we're looking at Nasuvince's project, we've disrupted the flow. So we've looked at not only how Navarra works with Aquitaine. We've said possibility. There's a possibility of this export to Aquitaine, but maybe it crosses via Irun. Yeah? So we're looking like really specifically because the optimum route, for example. So we've been generating these veins which have territorial implications. We'll talk about this again later. Initially, we have the input-output tables, which are related to production and trade, and they're a worldwide phenomena, these input-output tables. So it gives us a vision of the world where one of the parts, the 297 European regions figure within these within these world figures. So what's the tool like? And let's talk about this first tool on the NUTS 2 level of flows. So what we've done here, we've worked together with the. Let's look at one fundamental question. Each figure can be backed by the most official data possible, and these official data come from on exports and goods, country, produced by the United Nations, working with the CEPI in Paris, Ilabathi, which is a database which is really interesting. It's balanced trade data set. Balance it means that it's a mirror analysis. Yeah, so we're matching against the import in one country and the export in another. So it's so we don't get contradictory data about who's importing and who's exporting. It's well balanced. So working from there, which is the best data that we've got in terms of country. So up to 10,000 products. So we're having So how can we break this down in terms of transport, modes of transport? So let's look at Eurostat, which is databases, which are country. So they're sectors that are aggregate. So now this gives us a little bit more color to our analysis, yeah, wider ranging data. So we've got 5 modes of transport. So we've got trucks, rail, boats, planes, and others. So these official country flows. So now we're going to distribute them territorially between regions by the transport-based tools from Eurostat. So the biggest one is by road, because we've got 14 products here that it's been categorized. So we break that down for each year in the European space. The trend flows don't have the details per product. The ship ones neither. And the aircraft don't have details by product. But this product detail doesn't give us the country. So here we're mixing country data with region data. So we're just breaking it down by sector. The maximum we can get are these 14 products. But each of this data is added to the big picture. Yeah, we can say, my region trades a lot and yours doesn't and stuff. So we can keep adding all these things to the different regions' data. So let's look at the results. Here's a summary of what we've done with these tools. So we've got the flow mapper for visualization. It's an amazing tool. So we can generate all these displays, all these amazing diagrams. Yeah, the Sankey's and all types of maps. Yeah, flow intensities, really amazing. Yeah, we can talk about those later. And then in all the flows, here in goods, we've done this descriptive analysis. We've done cluster analysis. So what we want is for the data to speak for itself. So which regions look the most like each other? Yeah, which are the most similar, and how do they stand out from other regions? So we're looking at multivariate statistics. So we've got 7 indicators that only consider the flows themselves. So we're not putting population or anything like that in it, nothing else, just the flows. So we've got the intensity of sending, connectivity, weighted intensity, interregional balance, network selectivity, external influence, send-receive balance. So we can see which regions in Europe look most like each other, are the most similar. So we're looking at neighbors and network neighbors. So regions that are associated with others by their vinculating structure, what ties them together, not because they're right next to each other. And then we've got econometric analysis, so the gravity equation. So because the data is based on a statistics, we look at gravity, not to make the data, which has often been done, but to test that our data is logical, as we know, as we've learned from international trade flows. So here we've got a drawing for any region in Europe, for all 297 of them. So here are the connections. So it's a trade of goods results. So we've got the so we're taking away the intra ones from inside each country and looking at the extra ones, the external ones. So where interregional stops, then international starts. Yeah. So this is really interesting, really, really interesting data. We thought that European regions in France and Germany would have the greatest intensity, but that's what the basic gravity data would give us. But we can see that Ireland has only got 4 NUTS2 regions, but their intensity of trade is distributed between very few regions, just 4 regions. So it gives some spectacular international results. And then we can look at Italy. Yeah, so the very industrial regions is the north of Italy. So we can look at the largest flows, that we might have expected. So, I mean, it's normal when we look in the aggregate that Germany and France are the biggest, but when we look at the detail, there's things that we didn't necessarily expect. In the cluster analysis, there's 4 different types. So we've got Navarra in green, and the Basque Country, and Aquitaine as well. So this is based on flow, not on distance. So when we're looking at econometric analysis, so we can look at this slide. So we're looking at obstacles here, things that stop trade, barriers. So this is sophisticated econometrics. So watch indicators in the origin and destiny economies explain the barriers. And what explains that there's trade, more than average trade. So outermost is one of the barriers that is most, one of the drivers. And interregional trade. Interregional trade, what's that? A region that trades with itself, that trades 1.5 times more than one that doesn't trade with itself. So Navarra trades 1.5 times more with itself than with the Basque Country. Interregional, when we compare Navarra Basque Country with Navarra Aquitaine. Yeah, so it works with the Basque Country much more than it does with Aquitaine. So each time you cross an international border, your trade goes down. So these regions that belong to the EU, yeah, they have above average trade. So there's Switzerland, the UK, that don't belong to the EU anymore. The adjacent regions, or island countries, yeah, the Ireland or the UK, adjacent countries, or two countries that are next to each other that have higher trade. And then we see other things that act against the flow, yeah? So countries that are islands, yeah, it's a disadvantage to be an island, yeah? Two regions so distance, this is normal in gravity, yeah? The further away you are, the less trade there is. All these, yeah, they're all looking at all these different aspects at the same time. So now let's look at services. So this is this is uncharted territory. So the methodology we've as we go along, we've been working on this as we go along. So we also want to work from data, so official country data, and that comes from the World Trade Organization and the UNCTAD and the OECD, based in data and equivalent basin days, which is similar to BATI, which is called BATIS for services. And then, so we're looking at a reference point for how much one country trades with another, but we've got no idea about how this works within a country in terms of service sectors. Yeah, and if you don't get it right, you're going to make big mistakes here. So we need to look at macro data to have this broken down data within a particular country. So this is the official frame of flow, country flow. And now we need to regionalize it, yeah. So in the same way that we've done with goods. So we're looking at how regions move goods from region to region, and now we need to do that with services. What conceptual category can we use that's similar to mode of transport to give some to enhance this data? So the world of services is really interesting. It's not the same as a product that we sell a car. It's a lot easier to work with that data. A service isn't that easy to quantify. So there's 4 different ways of giving a service. 3 of them are based on a balance of payments, and 1 is on trade. So we're going to look at 1, 2, and 3. Mode 1, mode 2, and mode 4. What are we talking about here? Mode 1 is cross-border provision. So this is associated with online or phone, internet, those kind of services that are provided. So I use a travel agency that's in London, for example. Yeah, if I want to travel to London. So this is a service provider is British, and they're giving a service to me, and I live in Navarra, and I'm going on holiday. Mode 2 is consumption abroad. We identify this with tourism. It's more than that, but so when you cross a border, yeah, you see it as a goods. But that's only mode 2. So mode 4, producer presence, yeah? This is, for example, an architect or Shakira or a singer, sportsman, an actor who goes abroad to put on a show, and then they return. So they've given a service, yeah, because it's the service provider who moves temporarily. And then the ugly duckling here that doesn't come into the statistics, the official statistics, because we should really be giving it more emphasis, is mode 3, which is commercial presence. And we're talking about transnational firms here. So Google, which with headquarters in the US, which has branches, subsidiaries, located in many places, and Europe, for example. And this subsidiary gives the service, provides the service. Yeah, which is related to the headquarters. Yeah, so we're not including mode 3 here. So we're using the World Trade Organization TISMOS database, Trade in Services by Mode of Delivery, as a base. So this database officially tells us which services for which country are being provided in each of these modes. So let's look at insurance and financial services. It corresponds to 2 modes. 1, green, a little bit, yeah, a little bit of cross-border provision. So they might be providing them online, but mainly mode 3. But I can't get the information for mode 3. I can only get mode 1 because there's no official statistics for mode 3. So let's look at each of these 3 modes of provision with indicators which are on a region level. So Facebook. So we've got stats. We've got brilliant stats that allows us to look at regional, province by province connection data. So I can find out. I can use Facebook as an indicator of connectivity, yeah, for online provision. We can complement it with mails and parcels by road. It's a little bit simpler. And the transport flow by freight. So all this movements of goods, yeah, correspond to mode 1. So in mode 2, we've got flows of people by airship and train, which we're going to look at later. And then in mode 4, producer presence. So we're looking at work flows, yeah, labor flows, interregional labor flows, employed in service sectors. Yeah, so who's moved from one region to another to work, yeah? So with these indicators, these service flows, you're going to see the flows are normally within countries, so home buyers, yeah? Yeah, for services, it's logical that it should be domestic. Yeah, it's going to be within a country. But if we take away the intra-regional data, which is huge, then it's mainly within regional, interregional, between regions within a country. Then we've got. Let's look at the ones that, so Dusseldorf with Ansberg, they've got really high levels, yeah, and Ireland goes up a lot. So let's look at Aquitaine in France and work with these tools, and let's look at their main outgoing flows. Yeah, they're all going to be French. There's no really. Does it mean that there's not any strong ties with the Basque Country? But yes, there are, but not as massive. Yeah, you have to go to the top 50 to find the Basque Country. It's mainly French links. So there's terrain here. Yeah, it's a fertile ground to make improvements here. Yeah, because we've got international historical ties between these regions, and we're not making good use of them. So we can use this data to improve our trade. Yeah, it's really just inertia that we're not trading more with these regions because we're right next to them. So let's look at the cluster analysis. It's very interesting. So we've got them by service flow. And we've got the gravity model here. So interregional flows are, intra-regional is much stronger than interregional, and interregional is more than between nations. Yeah, so we're looking at home buyers there. It's really strong category. So we can work on this with international projects and infrastructures. So my conclusions. So we've got a really interesting little toy here to work with country flows, and it's not just aggregated data. We've got data that's been broken down. Yeah, it's not been contaminated. This data. It's pure data. It's pure raw data. We've not used distance to generate data in any model. It's a way of looking at the rationality of it, and this is what we've got. And the behavior between country and region is logical. Yeah, it makes sense. The home bias is very known, and it's very strong. It's very logical. So we're looking at it in terms of goods and services, in terms of countries, at country level and at regional level. And the home bias is much larger in services than in goods. Yeah, so there's a greater level of integration, and it's more international for goods than it is for services. Services very much a very strong home bias there.